Hey everyone, how is everyone today? How's everyone this morning, this beautiful morning? We are beginning our morning coffee for the soul, and today's topic is about critic, critique, being a critic, criticizing, anything that has to do with this thing that we always say that perhaps we are helping someone by a constructive criticism. And sometimes we are not. Sometimes we are simply, um, how would you say, just giving an opinion of how things should be the way we believe they should be. So, very important to know the difference because criticizing something already puts you in a position that you believe that somehow you know better. Do we know better? And that's the whole thing we're going to talk about. A lot of times we think that um, we are truly knowledgeable and better knowledgeable than a lot of other people. And in all reality is a lot of times we know even less than the work that we are criticizing. Now, okay, I'm talking about all this and maybe it sounds like, okay, get to the point, Debbie. I'm going to get to the point. We are critics a lot of times for things that we really have no business criticizing. Why do we have not any business criticizing any of the things that we usually criticize? Well, because most of it are things that we are not willing to take the risks ourselves. And how do we know that? Because we are not doing it. Now, even in the Bible, there's a passage where John, I think it's Apocalypse, John says something to the effect of, do not, God will throw up the warm, not the hot, not the cold. And what he means by that is those people who are always just, they don't have an attitude. They're neither cold or hot. They're just there. They don't have an attitude, yet they always have time to criticize what is already being done. And that's a terrible thing, and I'll tell you why. Because to do something, to do anything, takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time for you to expose yourself to criticism. Criticism will only get to us because we are doing something. You see, people that do nothing will not be criticized. When we go back and we look at our biggest brother, Jesus, did he get any critics? Did he get any criticism? He had critics, plenty of them. He had criticism all the time. And why is that? Because he was doing something, especially when he was doing something that was such a revolution in that area, where he is talking about love in a land that there is slavery, there is impositions, there is fights, there is so much chaos as far as um, ownership and so far as who dominates or not. And when you bring love into an area like that, you will be criticized. And so did Jesus. He's still criticized today. Then we look at ourselves and we pay attention as to what is it that we so much have the need to criticize. People take forever to do a painting. People take forever to write a book. People take, if we look at Spiritism, or if you look at your church, or if you look at whatever it is work that you're doing, here at Kardec Radio, for example, we're going to have a beautiful youth symposium for people that are young and they have all these questions. And this work is being brought with so much time to organize, so much time to get together to really see the topics that are important to young people and that are relevant to them. Yet you can bet that at the end of the whole thing, when everything is done and over, someone will come and say, well, I would have done it differently. You see, sometimes we see a little piece of something out of a huge whole picture, and we immediately we take a stand on it, and we already criticize it. Someone may take years to write a book, And it takes a person to just look at maybe the cover of the book and already form a position and form an opinion. And there is nothing wrong with opinion. The problem is when you start to criticize, when you choose to see the bad. If I do 258 things that are good and that are right, or if I write a book and there are maybe, I don't know, maybe 800,000 words in the book, well, people will criticize and they will remember that I misspelled three words in the book. And they will say that book was not revised the right way because I saw a few words that were misspelled. People that perhaps whose English is not their primary language. And so they're used to a different type of grammar in their homeland. And when they learn English, they'll still switch things around because your brain is wired to speak in a certain way. So even though you know the words, sometimes you will say things wrongly in the English manner. And they will be criticized for it. Oh, that's not the right way to do it. The problem is people are more concerned with the tidbits than the wholesomeness of a situation. And that is why we have to be so careful as to criticize the work of others, particularly the work that we know nothing about. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes we hear about a play or we hear about a spiritist center. I know, for example, um, my own spiritist center, because we are a nonprofit charitable organization, and we're divided actually into a spiritist center and a community sector. So when people say, is it one, is it the other? And I say, it's actually both. There are two separate sectors. And for those who don't know that, you will criticize those who want only a community center will say, well, there's a part of people here praying. And those who believe it's only a spiritual center will say, well, why do you do, I don't know, why do you do some kind of an event? Why do you do yoga? It's not spiritist. Well, because there's also a second part. So when people, and I'm just saying in a personal example, but we can look at it as far as all different things in different walks of life. When you don't know the entire picture, you are too quick to criticize. So for us to make a constructive criticism, the first thing you need is to actually get to know what it is that you're critiquing about. Let me go, let me see, let me pay attention, let me read the book, let me see if I even understand the subject before I can even form an opinion. It's very dangerous to have opinions without knowing the entire information. And that's something we do very much. So we have to take back and do not allow others to influence our opinions. Now, think about that friend that comes to you and says, "Oh, have you heard of such and such person? Oh, yeah, I've heard that person by name. I heard their name before. Oh, be careful because that person is this, this, this." Well, we are so easily influenced by what somebody else had told us that when we actually meet that person, we already have a formed opinion about someone we know nothing about, that we actually never had a conversation with that person. And we already either have a great feeling and say, "Oh, I heard so much about you. You are so amazing." Or we say, "I don't know about you." And we don't even give the person a chance to speak face to face. We might take a tidbit of this person's work. Maybe they wrote one book that was, or maybe they did one lecture, and maybe that person was a little off that day. Maybe that person wasn't really, maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe somebody had just died in their family, and they still went out and they did this lecture, and their mind wasn't really there, and they gave some information that maybe wasn't even correct. And if you went to that one lecture and you're already making judgment on that person because of one lecture out of 100 that they did, that is really an unfair practice. So, and we do it all the time. So, how many times we stop being friends with someone because they did one thing we didn't agree with? If we look at Allan Kardec, Kardec wrote, my goodness, we can only imagine. We think about the five books and the Spiritist magazines, all of those 12 editions, and we think about all these notes that he wrote, and he wrote for a bunch of different things. Yet we might say, oh, maybe he should have done it. I hear people say maybe he should have done it this way, or maybe he should have written with a different language, or maybe he, you see, criticism is a form of cowardice. And we have to really understand that every time that we criticize somebody or their work, unless we already do it better, we really have no place. And if we do it better, then it enters the moral aspect. Why would you not help instead of criticize? You see, you have always choices. We always have choices. If I see something I don't agree, or if or maybe it's wrong, well, then I have a duty to make it better or to help. The criticism is what fills our atmosphere, our world, with this dense um, fluid that we can feel. How many of us can feel sometimes sadness in the air, anger in the air? Well, that expression is very true. For those who study Spiritism will know that this is very true. And that actually comes out from us. That actually is a substance that comes out when you're angry. People can feel your energy. And we look at the energy of the world, and sometimes we say, why are things so sad? Why are things, because of that, because the criticism, because the sense of not helping is so high. That's part of it. There is a phrase that I heard, and I want to share with you. And it says that unasked advice without responsibility is criticism. And I really like this phrase because what we do a lot of times is we advise people without them asking and without taking any responsibility or offer to help. Well, that is criticism dressed in a more polished way. So when I come to you and I say, you know, um, I know you didn't say anything, but let me tell you, I think that maybe you should not be friends with this person. Or maybe you should not have done this. Or, your car really needs a polishing. Or I'm saying little things, friends, but let's bring this into a big aspect. Every time that I give advice to someone without them asking, in a way, I'm already saying that they're doing wrong. Is it true or not? Because if I'm advising, it's because I already don't agree with something. And when I advise without them asking, maybe they're thinking they're doing an amazing job. And maybe they are. Who am I to really have a stand or a position of judging what is good or bad in somebody else's capacity of doing that job? Perhaps it's the best they can do. And how am I going to help this person by criticizing them instead of offering help, offering support, and showing them, as Jesus has taught us, show them the other side. If someone hits you on the right cheek, show them the other. Offer them the other. And by what Jesus is saying that is offer them the other side. The other side of what they're doing wrong. Offer it. See, Jesus is not saying just show it to them and then leave and run away. What Jesus is saying is offer. When you offer something, you put yourself out there to be part of the change. So when you're about to offer advice to anyone, make sure, first of all, that you understand that you have authority to say that. Second, was the advice really asked of you? And thirdly, what are you going to do to make it better? Are you going to expose yourself out there and really get down and dirty, roll up your sleeves and help be part of the change that you so much want? We criticize politicians all the time, yet how many of us do not even vote, participate in town meetings, put our words out there? But if a politician does something, we immediately criticize and we say, oh, I can't believe that. Yet, we don't even know the whole story. We don't know all the other puppets a lot of times that are part of that play, let's say it like that. And we don't participate. So there are critics and there are creators. People that create anything will expose themselves to criticism. Critics are usually cowards, hidden and in this authority manner, but they are not creators. They don't do. They simply criticize. And when you criticize, you are actually taking yourself as a lesser of a person in a way, because you're saying, I'm not good enough to even try. So I have to criticize what's already there. You see the difference? You can choose to see something that's already there, understand that it is not good, and be part of the change. In constructive criticism, a lot of times we use that word, but we're really just criticizing because we think constructive mean my way is better than yours. So when I say something better, it's constructive. Well, if it's not warranted, then maybe it should not even be said. There are critics and there are creators. People that create things will expose themselves to criticism. Every time that, for example, I'm here live, correct? There is no delay. I'm really here live. Anything I say right now, many people can hear and people can record it. So the chances of Deborah making a mistake and getting feedback is much higher than someone who will take a camera, record what they have to do first, and then put it out there too on Facebook. True? So again, if we don't expose ourselves, we're not taking risks. Not everyone is a risk taker in the same manner, and it's okay. What we're talking about here is my chances of getting an email saying, do you believe what she said? Is much higher than someone who says nothing at all or who will edit what they're talking about. You see, that's why creative people, people that want to actually do something, create something, will always be more criticized. And regardless, we're going to be criticized even if we don't do anything. So, what is the call for spiritists? What is the call? When Kardec says, when Emmanuel says, the best thing you can do for our beautiful doctrine, the best thing you can do for the good news, for Jesus's gospel, is really to spread the word, is really to entice people to want to know more about, right? So if that's the best job you can do for your faith, if Christ himself was out there exposing himself to all types of criticism to speak the words of God, and what he wanted is to spread this beautiful, consoling teaching, right? That is love and that is all of these things that we learn from him. And then his disciples do the same thing, and they ask all the others, we are disciples, right? So if we are to spread this word, if we are to spread what Kardec has worked um, years of his life to compile all these beautiful teachings, and he wants us to speak about it, then we have to somehow expose ourselves to criticism. Because you know what? We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to misunderstand at times. But at least we are creating. We are being part of something that puts it out there. And when we close this door and we say, I'm not going to say anything, then what we're doing is, I am going to be a coward. I'm not going to, and we use this mask of not liking confrontation. I don't like confrontation. I don't have to be right. I want to be at peace. So, confrontation is when you need to impose your idea with someone else. That's a confrontation. I don't need to impose my idea. So, we can expose our thoughts, our learnings, everything. And if there is a confrontation, somebody doesn't agree, and if they want an argument, they want to fight, you may choose to not partake in this fight or confrontation. But it is our duty to spread anything that is good, whether you expose yourself to criticism or if you believe that you can do it in a different way, because usually we can't. Every creator will have criticism. Every critic will not usually partake in the work that they're criticizing about. How many of us criticize someone, maybe the way somebody dresses, but on their birthday we don't give anything that we wish that person to wear. There are so many subtle ways to actually be part of something we don't agree with in a positive note, instead of what we even call constructive criticism. Be very careful about that. Most of it is not constructive. That's what we think. So remember, unasked advice without authority, without responsibility, is criticism. Now, why do I say without responsibility? Because when I tell my children to go to college and I say, listen, make sure you get good grades. Oh, be careful, your grades are getting lowered. You're not going to get that scholarship if your grades keep up. That is criticism with responsibility, because I am responsible for that child. I am responsible for their future as long as they're under my guardianship. You see, so it is my duty to constructively criticize when they're doing wrong, but offer them help to make it better. So I have a responsibility there. Now, if I have no responsibility over your life, you who are watching now, and I say to you, maybe you should change your job. Um, well, I have no responsibility over your life. I know nothing about your job, maybe just a little tidbits of information that you tell me, yet I'm already offering what you should do with your life. So again, that makes me a critic. And when critics don't know anything about what they're talking about, and most of us don't because we don't know the life story of someone, then it makes me, in a way, a proudful person who thinks that they know better. See, that's very, very different. And critics, um, I like to say that they like to be on a safe place. People that criticize spiritism and they say, oh, this is a doctrine of the devil, all this, they talk to spirits, or, oh, in their places, I think they do this. Well, most of them, they have never been inside of a serious spiritist, not a spiritualist entity, because there are many of them. I'm not saying they're good or bad, but a spiritist center, if you ever go into a serious one who follows the work of Allan Kardec, unless you've been there, you'll see that sometimes it's actually quite boring. You're sitting and reading books and you expect this things happening, maybe spirits flying all over the place, and all you see is people working in the lunchroom and trying to sell little things, sell books so they can pay their rent and study books and give lectures about. So it's a very normal place. But for those who do not expose themselves to even understand the work and immediately criticize, be very careful. That's already telling you that you believe yourself to be so knowledgeable that you're in a position to already point fingers and decide what is good and what is bad. Criticism is closely related to pride. Chico Xavier. Chico's great because for Chico, everything was okay. People would come to Chico and say, oh, Chico, in my spiritual center, I'm thinking about starting mediumnic paintings. And Chico would say, go ahead, my son. If this is good, then go for it. People would come to Chico and say, Chico, I'm thinking about opening, or I think we want everybody to get the kids to go serve soup in the yard. And Chico, oh, that's amazing. Absolutely do this work. Chico was always, if he had nothing good to say or motivate, Chico would not say it. But Chico saw the good in people. And Chico would always say, even if whatever they do is not quite right yet, they're on the path. And for people to be on the path, that deserves good input, not criticism. Criticism can break a person. A place can close because you said, this paint is so awful. The paint on the wall, the color isn't right. Because people still have, that feeling still. People still are fragile. So we have to be so careful what we say to others. I have to change, my friend. What I have to end, and I want to end with this. If we go back in time and we look at the early Christians who stood in the Colosseum waiting for the lions, for the animals to actually come and tear them apart, they stood for something. They were criticized. They were pointed fingers. They said they were worshiping a God that was not the God that they should be worshiping. Yet they were peaceful and calm because they knew they stood for the right thing. They did not betray their Lord. They did not betray Jesus Christ. And they took it as things came. Now, are we being people who stand for things, who are not afraid of criticism, who do not allow others to really get under our skin? Let's be those Christians. For the Spiritist movement, for whatever you believe in, don't be that person that a little criticism will shut you down. You are so much better than that. Go for it. Take the Sunday and decide, what is it that I have in the back burner? What are the ideas I'm not putting forward to? What are the things I was told that I could never be good at? Let me be take these things from the dead. Let me bring it all back and let me work these things and shut my eyes and my ears to all the critics, because critics are non-doers. Critics are usually are not risk takers, and you are not that. You can do all of that. I want to thank you all and wish all the women a happy Mother's Day. Thank you everyone for being today here at Morning Coffee for the Soul. We will be back next week. Thank you.